Welcome to the Weekend Sustainability Report. In this presentation by the Revolution Project, we cover different news of the past week related to social progress and environmental sustainability. This is the third episode. Let's get started. The first update comes in from India, as India's carbon emissions fall for the first time in 4 decades, and it's not just because of the coronavirus lockdown. Falling electricity use and competition from renewables had weakened the demand for fossil fuels even before the coronavirus hit. However, it was a sudden nationwide lockdown in March that finally tipped the country's 37-year emissions growth trend into reverse. The study finds that Indian carbon dioxide emissions fell 15% in March and are likely to have fallen by 30% in April. According to figures published by the International Energy Agency, at the end of April, the world's use of coal was down 8% in the first quarter of the year. By contrast, wind and solar power saw a slight uptick in the demand internationally. Once you've installed a solar panel or a wind turbine, operating costs are very low and therefore tend to get priority on electricity grids. Environmentalists hope the clean air and clear skies Indians have enjoyed since lockdown will increase public pressure on the government to clean up the power sector and improve air quality. That news was read from bbc.com. The second news is about carbon neutral computing, as Intel plots path to zero waste and zero carbon computers. E-waste is a significant polluting factor in the environment, and according to businessgreen.com, Intel has unveiled a raft of new sustainability goals, declaring that carbon neutral computing is possible within next 10 years if the right advances are made in the sustainable design. For now, that's a prediction, but it is possible, as the company noted that it had hit most of its 2020 environmental goals, including a pledge to reduce its emissions by 10% compared to 2010 levels, achieve zero hazardous waste to landfill, maintain 100% clean energy at its US operations, and increase renewable power use internationally, and achieve a 90% non-hazardous waste recycling rate. That is very impressive from the tech giants, as they have already achieved all of this. The third news comes in from South America, and it's a sad one, as deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon increases for the 13th consecutive month. Despite the global economic slowdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic, deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon appears to be continuing largely unabated, with forest clearing over the past 12 months reaching the highest level since the monthly data started being released publicly in 2007. Deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon, which accounts for nearly two-thirds of the Amazon rainforest, has been trending upward since bottoming at 4,571 square kilometers in 2012. Prior to that, deforestation had been declining in the region thanks to better forest monitoring and environmental law enforcement, public and private sector efforts to curb forest clearing, the creation of new protected areas in indigenous territories. The rise in deforestation has been particularly sharp since Jair Bolsonaro assumed the presidency in 2019, as he rolled back on many environmental regulations. That news was quoted from ecowatch.com. The fourth and final news comes in from the UK, and if you've listened to the past two episodes, you might have noticed the fact that UK has done at least something every week in terms of sustainability, and this past week it did something more, with the news that large areas of London to go car-free as Mayor plots green COVID-19 recovery. Sadiq Khan has announced plans to transform parts of central London into one of the largest car-free zones in any capital city in the world, as part of a sweeping set of measures to support safer walking and cycling for workers as the battle against coronavirus continues. The Mayor of London said the plans would create more space for social distancing to assist people returning to work in the center of the city, with some streets restricted to walking and cycling only, and others limited to buses as well as pedestrians in order to boost safe and sustainable travel. This step is for public safety, and this will ultimately have a positive contribution towards a green recovery. Governments are gradually putting the general public first, and that is a form of a good governance. We quoted that news from businessgreen.com. Before we end this episode, we have a follow-up to last week's news. Last week we had a news which stated the motive of entrepreneurs and business leaders towards a green UK recovery, and they urged the Prime Minister to give concrete commitment towards it. And finally, Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Wednesday suggested the government's recovery efforts should prioritize low carbon infrastructure investments. And that is definitely progress. With that, we come to an end of this episode. We hope this report was fruitful for you. Please take care and keep the sustainability conversation alive. This is Ayush, your host, signing off. See you next week.